Welcome to this session, Optimized Procurement Processes and Integrated Supply Chain Vendor Collaboration. So I'm just warning you, I did that for some of the guys. The screen is very small, so if you want to move to the other side, you're welcome to do that. There is some free seats around here. Or you can, if it becomes a little bit difficult to see, you can do it during the session. I'm trying to kind of make my screen as visible as possible. But if you can't see it, please let me know, and then I'll try to see if I can zoom a little bit more in. Okay, so I am Mike Kirkland, and I have my colleague here, Mehmet, with me, and we're working out of the office in Copenhagen, where we have the supply chain collaboration responsibility in Dynamics 365 for operations. And so I'm program manager, and Mehmet, you are?
I'm engineering manager.
Yeah. So, and we're working together on this vendor collaboration for many different type of projects. So what we're going to do today is to try to look at some possible solutions for how to facilitate the vendor collaboration for purchase orders. And so, I have one question too. How many of you were at the session I had a year ago in technical conference around vendor collaboration? Okay, got one. So okay, it kind of gets me. I will adapt my demos after that, so I'm not assuming that you know a lot of things about the vendor collaboration interface that we have in 365. Another part of this presentation will also be about the requisition, how we facilitate the indirect procurement. So because we have done some new things there that actually can ease the creation of requisition. At the end of we will hope that we'll get time enough to get some time to talk about the CDS, because we also have focus on that, or how can we leverage the CDS to play a part in the vendor collaboration story as well. So I will be happy to take questions as we go along, but I may say stop at some point because we also have a time schedule. So a few questions is fine, and then we'll just refer to the end, or you can come up here and talk with me after. We have a program we want to go through and tell you about. So what's going to happen here is that first we'll talk about the vendor collaboration part. We're having a demo showing how the POs can flow back and forth from the purchasing agent to, or the purchasing department to the vendor that has access to this interface. And Mehmet is going to drill down a little bit on a data model. We're trying to not make it too technical part here, but just give you some important points about the model there. And then I'm going to talk about the security, vendor user collaboration, user provisioning. And at the end, I'll show you the punch out. We have enabled punch out in the system. And vendor collaboration CDS. So purchase order collaboration, what is it? What is it that we are targeting that, and why are we doing this? So if we take the why first, what we're focusing on is the companies where EDI solutions is too expensive to collaborate with your vendors on. Some vendors, big vendors, you have EDI connections. This is not the solution for this. This is kind of the old-fashioned portal type of story. We want those answers to be put, the responses on the POs to be put directly into the system, so they are there and can be consumed into the PO. We want to reduce the time that the purchasing people are using for getting responses back from vendors. So we have kind of a single source of truth in the 365 database. So what are we looking at here? We have enabled an interface in 365 where it's basically the same interface as other users have of 365. We just, with security roles and XDX policies, we have limited what the vendor can see, of course, focusing on the PO, his ability to respond to a PO, which are floating into the backend system. And then we have also enabled mobile capabilities, so the vendor can actually go in and see which POs is there for review for him to answer on. That is setting the scene with the vendor collaboration. The punch-out part is kind of taking another direction. It's more focused on the people doing requisition. So this is more making the vendor catalog available in the context where you're creating a requisition. So we want to reduce the need for maintaining product master data in AX, because the vendor knows better the product description and prices and so on. And we want to get accurate prices into the requisitions as well. But we also want to control who is actually accessing which catalogs and bringing their products into the requisition. And we have enabled the punch-out. We are supporting the CXML protocol, which is a change since 2012, where we had support of OCI and AXCI. There was a very dedicated Microsoft protocol with it. So now it's the CXML, and this is based on the feedback we got from the market. This is the most used protocol. So we can punch out from a requisition into an external site, and then we can return those shopping cart lines into the requisition. And we can control who is accessing what with our procurement policies. So this is kind of the two main area that this presentation is going to concentrate on. Let's see. Okay, so this is a picture of what have we shipped, and we want to kind of show you that we are investing in this area, vendor collaboration, and we are coming with continuous updates. So for a year ago, we shipped a solution where we could send a PO to the vendor, he could accept and reject, and you had to manually set up these vendor users. So that was the RTW. For the fall release, we have enabled so the vendor can suggest changes. He can respond per line, change quantity, change delivery date, split lines, and so on. And all that I will show you in a minute in the demo. We can go back and see the versions that has been sent, or the vendor can go back and see the version that has been sent to him. We support attachments, and we have visibility into if the vendor is having a consignment inventory, so he can see how much of his things are on stock. And we have also automated the user provisioning process, at least 99%. There's a little bit that I will show you as well. And in this January, we shipped a mobile app, so vendor could see POs and see their contacts. So it's a view-only mobile application that's there. And with this spring upcoming here, we enable the possibility to consume the changes that the vendor does. So if we accept the PO, it's basically flowing into AX again, and the delivery dates are updated, and we can swap the PO into a confirmed state without the purchasing department doing anything. And the last thing that we are coming with in the spring as well, this is the punch-out for CXML. And you have a question.
Yes, I have. As you know, in 2012, we have vendor collaborations on enterprise portal.
Yes.
And there was a lot of features, and I understand that this is made all from scratch because it's totally new features and all the things. One of my favorite features, and it's a feature that my customer needs, was in procurement bids. Because I have been roadmap since these all new features came out, but I don't see when will we have bids.
No, okay. But as I said, this is an area that we are continuously investing in, and the things that we had in Enterprise Portal, we have an initiative to bring that up to par. We don't have exact dates on when they are coming, but I didn't kind of put in there, but we certainly know that we're having a gap there. So that's, yeah, let me take one more question and then. But RFQ answering, I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the question, and I know it's a little bit hard to hear in the back. So the question here was if this bidding was e-procurement and so on. And it's, as I'm saying, we are investing in this area, and it will come on future releases. It's, yeah. So I can assure you we'll bring it up to par. Okay, so let's go into the product and see how it looks. Let's see. So now it's the time for me to put on my glasses. You know, I guess a lot of you know this. Okay, so this is basically the interface that the vendor is going in. I'm logged in as two different persons. So one screen is for the vendor that has logged in, and that's the purple thing. And then I have another screen, where I've logged in as basically an admin, or it should be a procurement professional, of course. And that is let's see what screen that is. I think it was a blue screen. Okay. So I would show you now a scenario where I'm creating a PO and I'm sending it to the portal. The vendor responds, just accept it, and you can see how it flows back in AX. And then I will also show how the vendor can respond with new capabilities of kind of going in more line details and so on. So let's go to the rich interface where the purchasing agent is operating, and look at the workspace. How is it? Can you see in the back? Is it okay? Okay, that's good. Because I'm trying. So I'm really zooming in here. So that's why it's not. There's not so much on the screen. So I need to kind of use the scroll bar here. So this is where you're preparing the purchase orders, and you can see there's a couple of new lists here. One list will be which ones are in external review and that requires action, meaning that when the vendor responds, then you can get those answers up here. And the other ones is which one is out there and waiting for the vendor to respond to. So I have set up my vendor account US 104, which is in our demo data. So I will show you later how you're setting the vendor up for vendor collaboration. So I will create a new purchase order. And a very simple one. Yeah, and you can see the quantities. Let's put a little bit more quantity on it. And as you can see, the delivery date down here is today. Let's just say it's today. And the confirmed delivery date is blank. And the PO is in approved state. If it was change management, the whole workflow part will be internal. It will not involve the vendor in the workflow. So you will complete the workflow in AX, and once it's approved, then it's ready to actually be sent to the vendor. So this action sent for confirmation lights up if the vendor is enabled for vendor collaboration, and I'm sending that. So if I had prepared a lot of POs, I could, of course, add those POs here to just include in that, so you're sending a bulk of PO as in one go. So let's just make sure that, so remember the number 76 here, because that should be the one that is showing up on the vendor side. So we have some, the tiles is not updating kind of instantaneously. It has, there's you can set, there's a 10 minutes sequence. So here he can see this 76 came in. Yes, you can. I mean, for this, when you're sending it, you can set up normal print management. So you can send an email, and then you have the POs attached. So he will know that, well, it's there. And then he will need to know the URL. Because we would like to eventually include the URL in that email, but that's not happening right now. But he would know that he needs to go to the portal for that. So here he can accept, reject, or suggest changes. He will probably just take a look at it first before he's just accepting it. And yeah, as you can see here, if there was an external item number, it will be available in the line details. We can control whether we're showing prices or not. This is a setting on the vendor. So in this case, we are sharing the prices with him. Everything is fine here. So in this scenario, I'll just go in, accept it. There is a little text down here which can be an instruction to the vendor of terms and conditions or other things, what's going to happen when you accept this. This is configurable. It can be set up. So you put a note like this is fine. Okay, don't have to put a note. And he just accepts it. So let's go in and see what happens on the purchasing side. Let's see. This one should disappear from the list. And on the purchasing side, I need to update this. This is what I forgot to say. This, when you send it, it gets to an external review. And the version is kept. So I can always go back to the version that I sent to the vendor. So here, now I update it. See, now we got the confirmed delivery date directly into the PO here. It's actually created a new version in the background because we are not updating the old version because I actually didn't send that confirmed delivery date to the vendor. So I need to kind of create a new version, but I'm putting it into the external review still. So now the only thing that's left here is to go in and confirm it. If we want a process where it's automatically being confirmed, you can just set it up on the vendor, and then it would kind of just be auto-processed by the PO. You have a...
Yes, the confirmed delivery date.
Yeah.
That has to come from...
But it comes from the vendor. When he accepts, then we say, okay, then he accepted the requested delivery date, and then we see, when he accepts the order, then we are interpreting that as if he's confirming the requested. Yeah. Next scenario. Easy now. I just want to show you the cases that, I mean, probably 90% of the cases he will just kind of accept it, right? So, I like your question. Okay, so if we go back to the workspace here, purchase order preparation, you can see this. In external review, and it requires action. It's because it's not confirmed yet. So, okay, we're saying this is just if you want kind of a gated process that the PO purchasing want to see it, and then they can just confirm it from here. So I can just confirm it, and then it's done. So let's go back on because this is like the TV kitchen here. I prepared one PO that has a little bit more lines. Here, send it to the vendor. So in this scenario, he's not really happy with what he's been asked for, because he wants to change a lot of things. And this is where I'm going to show you how you. So he will say he wants to suggest changes. But first of all, he will look at this PO, and then he can say, oh, it has notes and attachments. So you will go in and look what kind of notes and attachment to this line have. And this is the normal document handling framework, and there's a nice little picture here for him that maybe they're buying a kitten. Can everybody see it? So you can attach like notes, documents, images, labels, whatever that can be useful when they are handling the PO on the vendor side. And he will go in and suggest changes. It's a little bit slow. Maybe it's still on the wireless network here. And so there's different things he can go in and edit. He can, for example, let's say, if you say, well, the delivery date today, that's kind of impossible. I want to deliver everything in a week. Then he can use this confirmed delivery date on the header, and then just update header to line, so all the delivery dates are updated on the lines. So I don't want to do that because I want to show you something else. So delivery terms he can change, whatever he wants here. Mode of delivery, he can go in and enter his sales order number that kind of corresponds in his system. There. And then he can go in and look at the lines. And this indication in the top header, we want to tell him that there is attachment still. That was what we saw on the line before. So he can go and look for it on the line. So it's just kind of being more it should be more visible than it actually is on the purchasing agent side right now. We think the document's a little bit too hidden, and we wanted to improve that for when we are facing the vendor. Yeah. So you can say, let's say that the first line he will go in and change the confirmed delivery date, and when he pick another date here, it suddenly changes the line status. So now we can see it's accepted, but with changes. And then he can reject a line, saying, no, I cannot deliver that. Maybe he can put in a note and say, well, we are out of stock or something like that. He will put in a new note. If I can get this. There it is. So we got this added. And of course, the notes that we are exchanging back and forth on the PO, that has to be typed external. So we can put in notes inside or from the purchasing side that's internal, that cannot be seen by the vendor. But if it's classified as external, then you're sharing it with the vendor. Okay, so this one was rejected. And let's say this natural key computers, he don't have that, but he actually have an other one. He has an alternative, so he can substitute that line. So that means that you're creating another line below and saying this is another keyboard. Here, and he'll put, and I can deliver that the 21st, and then the quantity he can change the quantity, but in the case I just want to keep the quantity. And he would also here be able to upload descriptions or drawings of the new items that he's suggesting. So the last one I can show you here is how, let's say he basically these 7 he can deliver 3 in one chunk and then 4 another. So he can split the line as well. So this is he can split the delivery. And 2 there, and 5 here. Okay, and okay, let's see here. You can see the delivery lines. So there is check marks on the lines that is delivered, and since this one is split, it's not delivered. So it gives later on a good possibility to sort of what is actually being shipped and what is not. I just want to finish this before, because we don't have so much time. Now I'm accepting this with changes, because I want to show you how it's working. And of course you have another text here you can configure, so you're communicating. If he has changes, then there might be some other terms and conditions, so you want to communicate to the vendor. Okay, so this one, let's go on the purchasing side. So now we have got this, it's accepted with changes. I can view that response on the latest sent order. Okay, and here I can easily see this line was accepted with changes, and the The change here was the confirmed delivery date, so it's lighted up in bold, and if you hover over, you can actually see the original value. You can see that there is a couple of have notes and attachments on the lines. Go in and read what the vendor has added. You can see something substituted and so on. So you basically get this response back and have a lot of hints of what have been changed, and the same with the header. There is a bolded fields where things have changed here. So now how do you actually process this further? There's a lot of things that we cannot, from a system process. We don't support like creating automatically delivery schedules on the PO, nor do we support adding a line that is substituted. You need probably to go in on your product master and create this product if you want to add the line to the PO. So this is the more complicated cases which you need manual handling. And that is kind of indicated with the manual update. So here we have is the PO updated with this? In the simple cases where you have quantity and dates, you have a no, and you can process that automatically, but in the more complicated cases, you need a manual updating. So when I say process PO update, then those changes are automatically transferred to the PO. And as you knew from before, the PO was in status in external review. And since we need to create a new version, because POs is versioned, we are informing here that now it actually will go into an approved state. And if it was change management, it will go into a draft state. So I'm processing this. And I can go to the PO and then just take a look. I can jump directly to the PO from here. So now, of course, it's up to the purchasing agent to go in and handle manually the other lines. But the changes that that could be processed are put in here. Let's say the delivery date should be updated here. It's the 28th. So that concludes the. What I want to say, the substituted and the rejected and the split line has to be manually handled because we don't know from a system perspective what do we want to do with that. Okay, I'll take one question. Yeah.
Is there a way once they have sent in potential changes, is there a way for you to reject back to them or say we don't want to accept this other keyboard, or is that more of a...
It's the process would be that the purchasing agent either take the phone, right. But they can also include the changes that they accept and then send out a new PO.
Okay.
So that then it's kind of going in back and forth, and from both parts you can see the history of what have happened and when happened and what do they respond, and then you can look up the responses and so on. So that should be traceable. Yes. No. We would like to be there. We would also like to be there having policies around what are they allowed to change, which vendor can kind of delay it with how many days and so on. And that's kind of future that we would like to have those policies so we can be even more automatic processing of the responses. Yeah. Yeah. Last question. That's a good question. I need to come back with you because the hybrid is very new, but I would believe since the PO is on-prem, I would believe that this is also PRM. It's using the same. Yeah. Okay, I think we got that. So, do you want to take over and so? I just warn you, he's the technical guy, so now
since we are a bit over time, I will try to keep it a bit simpler, I guess. Sorry, I have a throat issue, so I'm not really able to speak well. Too much air conditioning in the US. So I just want to quickly go through it. I don't know how familiar you are with the versioning story on the purchase order itself. I'm not sure if it is even possible to see it in the back, but bear with me. So for purchase orders, we already had the versioning story, which is basically down the chain all the tables related to the purchase order itself, purchase header. They will be versioned, and there's a separate version table, and there's a separate history table which you can basically archive data to. We uptook the same thing for the response. I think it goes back to your question actually about how this communication goes through, so I want to explain that in a little bit more detail. So what happens is that once the purchaser creates a purchase order and sends it over to the vendor by saying in review, we will create a new version in the purchase order, and that version will be bound and sent to the vendor. So the vendor will have a read-only access to this, and based on this we will create a response version, which is one-to-one mapping to the response header, which is one-to-one mapping to the version that he received. This we do because we want to save the initial version that has been sent to the vendor, so that he can refer back to it in case there are more changes coming in from the customer side. And then we take this one and we create the response header and response lines and so on and so forth. As soon as the vendor wants to accept or reject or make a change, we create a new version of this and put these changes. We create this, pack it up, and send it back to the customer side. On the customer side, they will receive it. We will consume it with this new functionality that we have introduced. It will be consumed. And then, if the customer wants to, or the automatic logic will bring it back to the in-review state, or if it is accepted, we'll just go to the next state. But if they want to send out a new version, they will just set it back to the in-review state, and it will create a new version in the purchase order, which will initiate the whole process again. So responses will be based on the versions, and even in between, if you have new versions coming in, like if before the vendor accepts or rejects or makes changes, if there's a new version coming in, that will also create a bound version of the response. So those can be uptaken as well. So it's very flexible. It's also very easy to refer back to the original, what has been sent, what has been changed, and so on. So I just want to quickly explain this. Yep.
Okay. So let's move on and look at how are we making sure that the vendor cannot see other vendors' POs. Both we are using security roles and we're using XDS policies. So from kind of the technical part here, in Dynamics 365 we have a party. We start with a party. And how many is familiar with the party concept? Not that party, but that part. Okay, that's good. So it's kind of a generic representation of something, a person in this case, and a person in the real life is of course a person that we're trying to represent in AX, and that person can have contact persons playing a role as contact person for different vendors. So we're utilizing that relation. So there's a relation between a vendor account and that party. There could also be, this party could also be a contact person for other vendor accounts, meaning that if he is that, we allow him to see multiple vendor accounts in this vendor collaboration interface. And that is actually an improvement from what we had in the enterprise portal, where they had only one-to-one relation there, which we got some feedback on and did something to fix. So this is used for the XDS to resolve which accounts they can see. And we have other small handles on the relation saying, okay, even if he's a contact person with these two vendors, it might be he not able to, he shouldn't have allowed to see this other vendor's POs. So you can also control it in kind of a more granular way. So this party is associated with a user. And the user is the user is the place where we put these external the roles, the security roles. And on top of that, we have created a new system user role, system external user role, which has less capabilities of doing some of the query stuff and so on that other users has in AX. So in that way, we're trying to kind of limit what the vendor actually can do in AX. So we have this Peter at contosa.com, but he also needs to be authenticated, and that is done through Azure Active Directory. So Peter at contosa.com becomes a Azure Active Directory account. So we're not supporting the consumer account like Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and so on, but we are supporting new account. First of all, if he has a domain, this contoso.com, and the domain is already registered in Azure as a domain, then of course the user needs to be there in that domain being approved by his own domain owning person in his company. However, if that domain is not recognized by the Azure Active Directory or Azure, then we are in our provisioning actually creating a user in the background, and then Azure is making sure that he's sending mails to that user to approve that he becomes a user. But it's not then. Yeah, I have a visualization of that. Maybe it's a little bit easier to understand here. So we have different people playing roles in that. That the purchasing responsible. And the administrator, and then this vendor contact person. So what's happened here is that we are sending a user, or raising a user request based on a contact person that is defined in AX, this Peter guy, and we have workflow that is processing that, sending a task to the administrator that he should export the information about Peter, and in his Azure portal, he should upload this information, and Azure will figure out whether it's known or not known, but it will become a guest in your tenant. Then Azure will send an email to the contact person here, which will identify himself with a password, and at the same time the user is added, or parallel the user is added to AX, and then that vendor account, when the user can log in, because now the user is in AX and it's in Azure, so he can be authenticated. And all the things with the password, resetting password, everything is on the Azure side. Yeah. There was a hand.
What about licensing?
Licensing, I mean, if there's licensing guide, have a description of external users. And I'm always a little bit careful of answering that question. If there is a lot of conditions for when it's seen as an external user, it shouldn't be employed by your organization and so on. But if you kind of says yes to all these conditions, then my understanding is that it's for free, those users. But it's the licensing team that's answering on the licensing question. But read the licensing guide, and then there is this external user description. Okay, let's say if we can. How much time do I have? Maybe 2 minutes. Oh my God! How long time can you stay over time? Okay, so let.
Half an hour.
Oh, yeah. So this is the vendor. Let me just say how much I can go through it. So I said that the purchase agent could start up the process, but the vendor can certainly also start up the process. So he will have all contacts. He can go in and create a new. If he has this special security role, the vendor can actually go in and create a new contact, which we required to actually have a party created we can associate with the user. So this is, let's call him Peter. We did that before. Japan. And here's the vendor accounts that I, as a external user with the security role, have permission to kind of control. So if I had 2 vendors, there will be 2 vendors here, and I can select, okay, which one is Peter a contact for? Then I'll create my, now the contacts is created, and I also want to provision him, so I just provision vendor user here, and this is where I'm filling in Peter's at contoso.com. And I have kind of an explanation of which kind of emails work and what. So it's not Yahoo and Google and all that. So it's and then there's this is a new guy in my company, and I want to have him being access to vendor collaboration for these vendors, and he should be a admin like myself. So I can check 2 user roles. It's also set up how you set up external user roles that will appear here. There is something in the system to do that. So now I submit it, and I created a workflow in the background, and the workflow is actually going through a lot of steps. It's not. This is just demo data, so you can create the workflow as you want. But there's different components. There's some approval components that you continue, and then there's a component, a task for the admin where he's pulling out this data from AX, and then there's an approval component to create automatically an external user in AX. Yeah.
And that workflow is delivered out of the box.
This is delivered as demo data. It's not. I mean, when you So yeah. But I created wikis, and I explained the kind of examples in that wiki, so it's on the. Okay, so let's see if we have some user requests here. Let me see if the work items have come up. Sometimes it takes some time with this. Oops. Yeah, and then you can see on the work items now I got a user request here. And I will go in, and as I said, the first one is to just approve the request. I think I'm running out of time here. So I can just explain, let's go to, we can use the time, and then we can actually look at one of the users, how it's set up. Let me see, duplicate my tab. Yeah. So this is what I'm logged in with. So let's look at that. So we have some user roles here. We have this system external user. We have this vendor external and vendor admin external. The admin external is what giving you permission to go in and create contacts and user requests, whereas the other one gives access to treating POs and so on. And there's a whole invoicing part where I haven't talked about either, because there's also an invoicing capability. And the vendor external also give access to actually create draft invoices based on POs. Okay, so let's see if we have got some new. Let's see. Taking some time here. Okay, I can show you another thing while we're waiting. Okay, now it came. So let's do this, and then I can show you on the vendor how we're setting up the vendor afterwards. So here's where you can export the user invitation file. So automatically you can, or semi-automatically you can export it from Excel. This is an API that we are kind of waiting for from the Azure team to give us, which is soon there, I think, kind of to more automatically push that data into Azure. So you don't need to go into Azure portal and then upload that file. So this is the file where the information is captured. Okay, so once that comes, then we'll kind of close the gap and have a fully automated the user provisioning process. So now I have exported my user invitation file. I'm completing my task. And the next task that will come will be an approval for creating that user. But in the meantime, I'll just show you the vendor, how that is set up. We can go in here and see. Okay. Yeah. So where do I have it? I have it here, US 104. So in this vendor collaboration, this is actually the trick where you need to enable this one, vendor collaboration, to get the vendor to be able to collaborate. And then on the contact person, you can see the view contacts. You will be able to see Peter has been created here. And we are in the process of kind of creating him here as a user, but we have given him already the access to Access Vendor Portal. And let's see if we have the user request approved to create an AX user. So now I'm taking this one and approving that. Sorry? That was, I mean, all these things comes into, this is a workflow. So it's works items assigned to me. So, yeah. Okay. So let's see if we have Peter in our list. Because that would conclude our. And we don't have him in yet. But that should come. So the last thing we're waiting for here, which I promise you will happen, and if it does happen, it's playing a trick on me here. It's that Peter is created in AX and he's Azure and he got the mail. You can also, in the workflow, you can also construct a mail with a mail template and send it to him as well if you want to have more information about how is it to be a user in your Dynamics 365. But that's a workflow configuration thing. Okay, so that concludes it. Now we're finished with the vendor collaboration, and only one question because we want to go to the punch out. Yeah.
Just two questions.
Yeah. Do we allow that?
One is the email.
Yeah.
Does the contact person have two emails? The one you created, the internal one, and another one for communication?
He can, but of course, if you're communicating. Azure portal is using that email, the account email, to communicate with.
Yeah,
but
you never receive the email, right? On this exchange, on this other.
Okay. But yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be control source. Whatever you email.
Oh,
Yeah, it doesn't. She used control source just as an example.
oh okay.
Yeah.
Could be a real one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second question is, do you have any story for vendor managed inventory?
Yes, I do, but that story is a couple of years ahead. So we have a lot of things that we want to enable, and it's definitely something that is approaching. I mean, coming next on the list, or it's in the backlog, and we want to enable that. But all depends on timing or resources. It's not in the spring release. I will say that. It's not in the fall release either. Yeah. Okay, so let's jump on to. Time runs. What do you say, Mehmet? Okay. So now we clear our minds. No vendor collaboration interface. We're starting at a new section, and that is the requisition part with a punch out. And just to kind of set the scene of what I'm going to show is, and have a little bit of background what's actually happened, is that creating a requisition. And from that requisition, you can select an external catalog. And when you do that, you can go to this external site. You will shop there, collect actually make a shopping cart. And then you are checking that out. And once you're doing that, I forgot to say that the lower part here, if you can see that, it's to represent what's happening, and Mehmet will go down in detail of that, what's happening from Dynamics 365 and to this the vendor's system. So there is a XML punch-out setup request that's configured with the credentials and secrets and URL where to return and so on. But on the user layer here, we are adding products to cart in external catalog, and we're checking that out. And when we check out, whoops, a message comes back, a post-back message with all the nice products and information about prices and so on into my requisition. And then I'll validate, well, does it look right? How I'm mapping the procurement categories of my system so it becomes correct in my system, and then I'm adding them to the requisition. And from that requisition, I can punch out to multiple catalogs just one by one. And then from here on, then it's a normal process that you're submitting the requisition to workflow and so on. So let's take a look at that. Here. So I will go to my employee self-service workspace, and I personalized this workspace. So I added my requisition prepared by me list. That's very easy to personalize that and add a tile on this workspace because it's not there out of the box. So I can see I have 2 prepared by me, and I'll create a new one here. I want to have some things for the tech content because in many days I've been looking for some of these dongle things and cables because we needed to display here and get internet connection. So this is standard requisition thing here. Then this one is new, external catalogs. I'll click on this. And so I am the preparer, and then there's a concept of the requester. So if I have permission, I can request on behalf of somebody else. This requester is employed or can allow to procure products in certain operating units or legal entities. Okay, so these operating unit, legal entities, operating units, you can create purchasing policies for those, saying that if you are procuring in these from these legal entities, then you can shop in. I mean, if you buy computers, you need to buy it from approved vendors, or if you buy blah, you need to have preferred vendors. There's a lot of rules that you can set up, and you are not allowed to buy within the weapons category. So there's restrictions. So you have your procurement categories defined, but only some of them can be purchase from if you were doing it in certain. So that is used to go in and figure out which catalogs can I then access, because we map procurement categories to the catalogs as well when we're setting them up. So here you can, now I have only one, but you might see several of them depending on your permissions. I can go in and say, oh, my requester is not Julia, it's not me. I can say, well, it's another person, and then of course the policies will filter out these categories or these catalogs. Okay, so the next thing is that when I punch out, it has been very, very important for us to communicate to the user. Now you are leaving Dynamics 365, but you're basically going into another person's site. You're not placing an order. You're asking for a quote. So because that's the point. You're not buying at this moment. So when the user says okay to that, then we allow it. So now it's doing the communication and communicating to DDW. This is what we have set up for tests here. And I mean, you can basically browse whatever you want here. And so I want these video cables. Oh, find cables. No, I don't want to find it. There it is. Add to cart. Okay, so this I'm checking out. And transfer to shopping cart. And now I'm returning back to Dynamics. I could of course have selected a lot of products here. There could have been a long list. But since I don't really know the category that this is in from their part. So I need to decide, pick the right category that I'm allowed to buy within. So I can, if I have many lines, I can do update procurement category for all the lines, so I don't need to go in on every line, or I can just go in on a line basis here. So I will map it to a procurement category, saying office, disk, and accessories. And then there's another thing. I could potentially get issues with this line, and that's if my system administrator haven't set the system up correctly to this vendor, because we need to recognize the unit of measure. If we get that back, we also need to recognize the currency. So that has to be set up in the system. If we don't recognize that, then we will not allow to put this line into the requisition, because then it's kind of a data error thing. But hopefully that shouldn't happen. It's only if the system is not configured with the right unit of measures and so on. Okay, so this one is validated. It's fine. And I cannot change the price, of course, because this is my quote coming in. And I'm adding this to the requisition I'm working on. And as you see, we have a line here, and this is an external catalog item. It's a new line type. And then the number, it has an external item number, which is the vendor's number. So when I send it to the PO, to the vendor, he will kind of recognize this. We're putting in the item description here. And in this case, he actually gave us a category number in case we want to use that for anything. It's not necessarily what our categories are in AX. We have the right price information, but it cannot be changed when you have this kind of external catalog item, which makes sense because this is the quote that you got. So now the next thing you should do is just to submit it to workflow. And then business as usual with the requisitions. Okay, that was a very fast walkthrough, and then I want to show you the how we are setting up these external catalogs. Hey, better visit. Yep. Who's that?
Yep.
Yeah. You again?
Really looks like, sorry. Really looks like what we had in ACE 2012 already.
Yeah.
Is there anything that is not possible here, which is possible in 2012 and the other way around?
The process is a little bit different, because in 2012 you had the EP shopping site, and then you had the catalog, which we don't have right now, with the items and so on. And then you were going into a category, and then you are finding the catalog there. So this is kind of a little bit the other way around that we want to, because how many external catalogs do we really have? So we don't, yeah. So you could easily see them as a glance, because this is kind of, you're getting faster to the catalogs here than we did before. Other than that, I don't think there is. I mean, we improved it by supporting the CXML protocol, which we had a lot of requests for.
And from our experience, this is highly underrated functionality, because it works like a charm, it works out of the box, and it hardly needs customization.
Mm.
So a call to action for all partners that are here, this is fantastic functionality, and we should use it a lot more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree. And I can also see it on the feedback we've got when we're presenting it and the request. So I'm personally very happy that we succeeded to bring this in. We had, as Mehmet will explain in a moment, a lot of things with the platform part as well that we need to fix. That is now it's working perfectly. So this is where you're setting it up. But thank you for. Huh?
Sorry, how to find it in the menu?
Which one? The external catalogs or the requisition?
How to set up the external catalog?
It's so easy. You just go in and write external catalogs here. But you can find it under procurement and sourcing. This is spring release. So you don't have it. It's coming.
Included in update 4?
No, update 4 is a platform update. But our need for supporting this is in update 4. But we don't have the app, so yeah. So it will soon come. Okay, so here you can create. You can add the. Yeah, I'm in time, so now soon you can add a picture, and you activate, deactivate. You're mapping it to a vendor. If the vendor is present in multiple entities, you can go in and prevent the access for special legal entities. And you can go in and map the procurement. That was what I talked about before with the policies. Okay, so now I'll give it over to Mirren. We'll have more technical. Do you need the I mean, I think you would like to talk about this punch-out message format.
Yes. So the 2 minutes are up. So
I'm sorry.
So that kind of spares you from this whole technical talk I was planning to do. So how many are familiar with CXML protocol in general? Okay, not me. That's good. Let me bring up the user guide and I will show it to you. No, I'm joking. What we did is actually also as an improvement. So CXML is basically a protocol by Ariba, and this is a widely used protocol for e-commerce in general. For punch-out, it starts as a punch-out protocol. And it's XML-based, as the name implies, it's an XML-based protocol. So let me quickly switch to my presentation to show you what I'll be covering quickly. So the CXML protocol and how that's set up and how you enter that information, the platform changes we had to do on update and why we had to take an update for dependency. Long story short, we had to make changes since this is a cloud-based release. We had to make changes to enable the postback from the vendor site back to AX or Dynamics 365 for operations, and that required a lot of changes on the platform side. So, not to go into too many details, we have a dependency, hard dependency on platform update 4. So that should be kept in mind when this is being uptaken. Communication with the external systems and the security related to this. And lastly, I would like to talk about extension story. Probably I will prioritize this because that might come in more handy for the partner community. So, let me quickly switch back to this part. So what we introduced here, let me not share too much information, is an editable... Yes.
The credentials for
there are some credential information which I don't want to share on the previous one. So we introduced this editable text box here, which you can basically use as an XML editor. Not with the whole IntelliSense and so on, but just as a normal text editor, in a way, where you can dump your CXML message. Which this message here is the request message. CXML is a handshake protocol. So how it goes is that you send an initiation request to the vendor site. The vendor site configured for it will receive this, and based on the credential information and everything, which I will show in a minute, it will send back a success or reject message. If it's a success message, we'll basically take some data from this file, and we will just append it all together, and we will redirect you to the vendor's website, essentially. Once you're done with your shopping, you'll be redirected back, and your basket is wholly consumed, like Maya was showing. So this CXML setup request message basically has multiple versions, so you can use a lot of versions. B, out of the box, will provide a sample message file. That's not to be, you can use it directly. You can just edit here. For example, if you want to add some credential domain. No, contoso. I couldn't type it. If you can enter it directly here, and you can save it. One extra benefit that CXML has, but we haven't intentionally implemented, is DTD validation. So you can actually validate the schema using the DTD that the Ariba org actually provides. We haven't uptaken that because there's certain security issues with it. They can actually do a lot of cross-scripting. So it's a recommendation to actually, once you have your CXML file, it's usually negotiated with the vendor. Go and do the DTD validation, get the schema in place and everything. But it's an additional step. What you can do is you can go to this validate settings button over here, which will open the vendor website. It will be a test connection, so you can see that your setup is correct. In the CXML file, this is a very minimal that we're including, but you can have a lot and lots of fields. The most basic ones and the most important ones are the credential fields and from and to URL domains, and basically the setup things like the buyer's cookie and the ID of the sending and so on that we will be providing. So what's important here is that we are actually taking what you type and overriding some of those. So the most important information you would have to provide is to, which is basically which site you need to connect to and the credential information related to that. But the from information, which is over here, we will in the runtime overwrite this with your, some information about you, and also the buyer cookie, which is basically what we'll be identifying in session ID, and in the runtime we will also populate some other fields which the vendor side will be using. The whole communication takes place in HTTPS format, so it's a secured encrypted format, and we enforce HTTPS communication, so the site has to have an HTTP address, otherwise you will not be able to use the punch-out feature. So we have over here, as you can see, the extrinsic fields. CXML protocol supports extrinsics, which are basically not defined in the protocol, but you can freely type anything. Maya has shown this, and you can type, user, or you can have username. Many of the vendors actually expect a username. This is a note. What we have provided here is 3 default values, but this can be extended. So I'll come back to this in the extension story. So long story short, what happens behind the scenes, and I stole my presentation, or the slide for this one, is that we start with the setup of the punch-out. One thing I should mention here is that these 2 fields that I show are actually TPF bound to an IT administrator role. So anyone else than IT administrator will not be able to see it unless you set it up specifically. That's because we actually store credential information in the database with this CXML format. So behind the scenes, what happens very quickly is that you set up the CXML protocol, and then you go to Requisition, you initiate your session, which will create in this platform table that we introduced, will create a session. The session will be basically having the information, and it will be populated from the protocol message or the request message you have defined. And then it will send the request message to the vendor side. The vendor will say, I accept, or this is approved. It will come back, and we will connect, we will redirect the customer to the vendor side in HTTPS. The user will do whatever they are doing. They will finish their shopping. They will be redirected back to a URL that we have provided. We have a runtime changed. And the important part about this URL is that it's constructed on the runtime. So there's a static address appended with the session ID, which is actually a security measure, because then we are kind of killing the spoofing attacks and everything, because you're actively changing the endpoint ID. And then you're redirected back to this HTTPS connection in encrypted format. We had to do this in platform, so we pick it up. We pick up the response message from the site. We will put it inside the same table with the session. And then we'll have special parser logic, which will pick this up and will parse it, put it to the basket tables that are necessary. It's pretty much the same data model as it existed before, so it's the same basket logic. And then we will put it on the UI where you can process the basket. Once everything is complete, it will be consumed in the requisition. So, long story short, that's pretty much the story. So I did the demo. I'm going to skip this. Oops. Yeah, the extension story, that's, I think, quite interesting. What we tried to do is try to make it as extensible as possible, because, as we said, we removed 2 other protocols. We introduced the XML instead. But we wanted to also give possibility of extending the protocols, extending the fields. So I can say that there's 2 ways to extend. One is extending by fields. For example, if you cannot only use static fields by typing, you would like to use some database fields and so on, then you would have to do extensions. Or you can use the extrinsics if you want to, out-of-the-box extrinsics that we have provided. Or you might want to extend the protocols. In both cases, we have implemented sysplugin framework, so it's quite easy to hook and extend all the logical code or the functional part of it. With one exception, that's the platform part. So with the new cloud approach, it's very hard to modify the platform. So you might want to go down the path of implementing microservices, which will essentially be a relay. So once you do the whole punch-out request side of it, and the vendor sends you back, redirects you, you would have to provide this specific service endpoint that you have created, and that will take the message and it will just relay the message back to AX with the necessary credentials and so on. So that's a workaround, and it's quite doable. It's just going to have some extra effort to do this. This is only when you want to do some protocol extensions. For CXML, we support it out of the box. So that's pretty much the technical thing. I hope I was on time.
Ooh. So We have 5 minutes left, and we actually also wanted to show you some of the cool stuff that we're working on right now with the CDS, because one thing is the vendor collaboration, of course, in Dynamics 365, but we also have seen the CDS as a potential for sharing purchase order, kind of enabling that same scenario. We have a feedback session Wednesday from 1:30 to 2:45, where we are going a little bit deeper into that, and I can just show you shortly some of the UI that we are thinking about implementing. So creating an app on top of CDS, the same scenario we've talked about before, where the vendor is seeing his purchase orders, with some feeds around the last updates and so on. So it's kind of, I mean, we have a little bit more freedom from a UI perspective if you're creating these new apps on top of CDS. So this is, I mean, this is not for spring release or anything coming up. This is, I think probably a lot of you have attended the CDS sessions and stuff like that. So this is just kind of thinking a little bit parallel for CDS as well. So, very quick question, yeah? Yeah.
I can ask you after.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I just want to show, and also giving a little teaser for you, if you want to attend the meeting tomorrow. So here we have PO headers, and they can drop down, see the lines immediately, which give a better visibility into lines and across POs. This will be all the POs that's in review that he received too. And if he wants to open an order, he will go into, this will be an order where we can expand the header information and collapse the header information, and he can go in and expand the line and see, I mean, some of these small gadgets of showing cards and showing the image of the product, how to show attachments in a more kind of nice way here, adding notes, having some dates, confirmation dates, and so on. So this is up to debate, and here will he accept or reject, or we can also, I mean, yeah, the changes. If it's something that has been changed, we will visualize it, but what has been changed from this and this. So this is new stuff.
So I think the idea is basically that we would like to collect all your systems into one place, and then basically be able to do the vendor collaboration from that single.
Yeah, so the POs are moved into the CDS. You had do you want to take it now? Yeah.
Two questions. Where does vendor performance, are they able to see that from the portal, like rate? Yeah.
Yeah, that has not been a thing that we have put into the portal, is not, but it's one of the backlog items as well, which we make.
And another thing is in the backlog for load creation from vendor. So you send them multiple PO, they confirm when they're ready to ship it. You know, they have all the container shipping information.
Yeah.
Well, after they input that, I would like to create a load automatically.
Yeah.
So we can
Great scenario. Yeah, we have a lot of nice scenario that I mean, as I said, we are continuously investing in this area. Yeah. We have a big backlog. The ASN document kind of warning that now the goods are sent. I mean, right now in I didn't show you that, but you can on the PO you can see that it's received at least, and you can see that it's invoiced, but you cannot communicate yet to the vendor. But you can say it's X++. It's really easy to extend. You have the security model in place, the security roles. So, I mean, I think it would be candy for ISVs or partners to kind of. There's a lot of good scenarios that can be enabled, and we will also do that. But of course, our kind of pace will maybe be a little bit slower. If there's somebody that picks it up and put 5 developers on it or something like that. So, yeah. Yes, he is. Maybe I can. He's able to create as if it was created inside Dynamics 365, not with the logos on. No.
So it's with.
He will.
He can't have his own invoice number and so on.
He can put in a number. So it has been. You can create a draft invoice, but it's just mimicking the functionality of creating a draft inside AX. Yeah, so that's what you won't put the logo, but you also put an invoice number into to that normal interface. So he could put his own invoice number into that interface, yes, and then submit it to workflow, and then it's processed in the backend. Yeah. Yeah.
If I understand, you can order stuff from vendor catalog, but what happened at reception time when you receive the good and you want to manage the goods inside your warehouse or something? You receive something, you don't have the master data for it, so how do you tie into the rest of it?
Yeah, but it's not different from what you have today. You have these catalog lines. I will say the scenario that this is used is normally indirect procurement, where you don't need to have it inventoried or so on. So, and if you need it as an inventory, then of course you will create a product for it, and then people will not punch out to a vendor catalog. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll take the last questions, and we can continue afterwards. No problem. It's just to release the crowd, and I have a couple of slides I also want to show. What do you say? They can, as I said, they can split the delivery. When they will respond to the PO, then they can split the delivery in multiple lines if that's what you're heading for, yes. But of course, we have a challenge to consume it when it comes back. As I said, this needs to be manual processed, meaning that somebody needs to sit in AX and actually manually create those delivery schedules. So that part is not automated yet. Okay, so I will just show the last slides, and you're welcome to come up and talk afterwards. I just want to make sure that we are releasing the people that has other obligations. Q&A, we did that. This is us, our contacts information, and please fill out the surveys. Our session materials is there as well. A lot of the things of vendor collaboration for fall release is on our wiki site on all of the product information, so I have described that in a lot of details, and the punch out is coming out as a wiki. What? This is the, I can give you the list. Is the help text, yeah.
Oh, I thought you had a specific.
No. Thank you.
Thank you.